What I like about the lifestyle about it is all the benefits that most people never really talk about outside of urbanism. The physical health benefits, losing weight, just feeling better, having a better heart, having better lungs, better legs. Like if you just sit in a car in an hour going to work compared to going like an hour and a half bike ride is a long ride. I have done that to work. So
Yeah.
you would know, like you get into work and you might be a
Yeah.
little tired, but you are strangely focused and you're ready, compared to feeling groggy. Like it's just a different mentality. And a lot of people, and there's statistics on this, that people who cycle to work are more productive. Businesses should have every reason to incentivize their workers to be doing this.
Welcome back to Cities in Motion. I'm Jacob. This is the podcast for anyone who wants cities built for people. Each week, we dig into the systems, design, and culture that shape urban life and explore how smarter transportation, better planning, and thoughtful policy can make our communities more livable. Brett Hahn McMurdy is the mind behind Car-Free Community Trust, or CFCT. The concept merges cohousing and coworking within a car-free lifestyle framework built around renovating urban properties, intentional community, and social entrepreneurship. Brett writes about all of this over at Car-Free Communities on Substack. And the deeper you go, the more you realize how much he's wrestling with the same questions we talk about on this show. How do we actually build the kind of places people want to live in instead of just planning around the car as a given? We're going to get into what a CFCT actually looks like in practice and what it would take to make it real. Please welcome Brett to Cities in Motion. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell me about Car-Free Communities?
My name is Brett Hans McMurdy. I go by my middle name, Hans. Most people, it's kind of funny, never know me by my first name. I don't hide it. It's just I go by my middle name. So yeah, I went to school, applied sociology, bounced around with a lot of different paths, whether it's from sales, B2B, B2C, political organizing heavily, whenever the campaign season, especially presidentials are around. And I taught myself software and front end, back end, cybersecurity, a lot of stuff which we'll cover on the space that helps me learn about that co-working spaces in particular. And then eventually I heard about cul-de-sac and it just kind of got me thinking about things. I'm like, this is cool, but I would like to see this kind of thing. And I kind of started initially creating Car-Free Community Trust as kind of like a joke page. And then I was like, okay, I like the ideas that I'm coming with. I don't know how to implement them. Still don't. But, I want to, publish more about it and be a little more serious. And then obviously the most recent stuff happened last month where it's like, okay, I need to change the tune and be a little more political because this is very different. So is that going to answer your question?
Yeah, of course. And correct me if I'm wrong, you are in Arizona?
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool.
And you're in Texas, right?
Yes, I am in Texas. Howdy.
You're like this. I always think of Texas as a sister state because we're both very deserty
Yeah.
and very, Western, but you guys got a coastline.
Well, yeah, that's how it's perceived in the movies, but where I am at, it's called the Texas Hill Country, and it's
Okay.
just green and hilly. And the more east you get into Texas, the more it looks like the Appalachia, basically.
Really?
It's perceived as like desert is like El Paso, the western part, and then there's like Houston and Dallas and all those more western cities where it's very foresty, very green. It's a very large state, so it's very diverse. Anyway,
I can relate to that because they think that other people think of Arizona the same way, and we get snow up north.
yeah.
So
Are there any cities or neighborhoods you've seen that really embody your principles or the principles you go to exhibit? What does daily life feel like there?
yeah, so this is kind of more on like architectural kind of inspirations, I think. So like Marina City in Chicago, which is very car oriented, so you might be surprised to hear that. I really love how they design it. It just what happens if those bottom floors weren't for parking and they were for more community spaces and community value, for example? You know, Diane Kellogg School is a girls' school in India, and it has this wonderful sustainable design that allows it to stay cool year round in a desert environment. And I find that really interesting because most buildings we have here in the US are very square, or a lot of places, not just the US. Another place it more in America is Whitner, Alaska, where they basically have an entire city in one 17-story building, which I've never been to, but I think the idea of that's really interesting, how you can fit so much of a community in one building, and all the needs of the city there. And, that extreme cold compared to the desert environment of Arizona is also very interesting. And obviously, cul-de-sac too is the only walkable apartment complex in America right now that I know of.
What connections do you have there in cul-de-sac?
It's in Tempe. I'm in Mesa, but like, we just know people, and you know, it's heavily involved in the cycling community. I'm in the cycling community, so there's just lots of overlaps. I don't
Can you
work for them or
can you
anything.
tell me more about the cycling community there? Like how it started, how popular is it at the moment?
Well, I mean, I don't know about how it started per se, because I've only been involved for like maybe 5 years, and I'm not like terribly involved. It's pretty big. Like we have two huge rides every month. The third Friday in Mesa is Bike Mesa, and that gets over 100 people every month. And then Critical Mass, like in many places, is well known. And the Phoenix Critical Mass gets same, I think one, maybe even 200 a month. At the end of last year, like they were starting, I think in Mesa or even in Gilbert, and went all the way up to Phoenix to and that was really cool. So just a really thriving community. And that's not even including down in Tucson, where they have this huge loop around the whole city for like 100 something miles. A lot of Arizona, whether it's the greater Phoenix metro area or like I said, down in Tucson, it's very flat. And so you can just do these long cycling, often with very little car contact at all. Sometimes there's a break. Most of these have some break where you can't go completely car free on a long distance ride, but it's just a great place to live. And a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah. I have, I guess, driven through like many people, but I would love to stop and explore. Maybe
Yeah.
an excuse to get over there. Maybe does Amtrak go through Arizona?
We are very bad at rail. I think
Okay.
in Flagstaff. I'm a big advocate for like because like I can't take a train to Flagstaff and I
Yeah.
can't take a train down to Tucson. I think if I go up to Flagstaff because of Route 66, I can go different places if I remember right, but I haven't done that myself, so I don't know all the routes.
Okay. Those trails that you're talking about remind me of, I mean, I think Texas does a great job with trails, especially like urban trails around all of our major metroplexes. There's the circumference. Basically, it's like a loop. Anytime I'm recording a podcast, my cat loves to jump on my lap. She wants to be.
I have my dog in a separate room and a barrier between my door because otherwise he'll knock on the door, so I totally get that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. San Antonio, Dallas, Houston, they all have really, really great trails. And of course, Austin here has like a 10-mile car free trail. And they just
Oh, that's
opened up a new
kitty.
pedestrian trail this morning. I went and checked that out. It was really, really cool. Now, um, how would you define car free communities? Is it really just like nobody gets to drive, or is it
No.
really more shifting people's priorities?
Shifting priorities
Okay.
100%. And
Okay.
so like the way I wrote down this is like any community actively fighting against the climate crisis through
Mhm.
a policy that advocates for accessibility over walkability. Walkability is important, but we need to put people in wheelchairs first in that conversation. And then, talking about road and parking diets, better bus stops that are covered, like I'm seeing all in the media right now, the big snowstorms and what it's doing to people on wheelchairs, what it's doing to people on bikes, having better conversations about building better bus stops that are protected against environments, whether it's a dust storm, a really bad heat, or really bad, snowstorms is really an important conversation that just somehow gets lost. And then, of course, more bike parking and faster e-bike charging stations rather than just fast car charging. We can't charge e-bikes in under 2 hours or an hour anywhere. Our batteries aren't really designed for it. We don't have good open standards for them. There's no real standards for them. And we need to be having those kind of conversations about e-bikes rather than ban them and all this other nonsense.
I heard
We're
about
just not
that.
having that.
I heard about New Jersey.
Yeah,
That's silly.
they definitely walked it back as
Okay.
most people kind of expected. But yeah, and that seems to be spreading across multiple states now too. That general consensus.
All I really want is to be able to, I guess, travel how I want in a city.
Mhm.
If I want to ride a scooter or I want to ride the bus or I even want to drive my car, like I should be able to move easily. If everyone drives a car, then of course there's traffic.
It's
Um,
congestion.
if you have the option and you are encouraged because great bike lanes, great trails, great all that, people are encouraged to get out of their car. And if you love your car, great. You get to stay in your car and you get a shorter commute.
Yeah, I completely agree. And like you have the next question, I think, is like, what do you think people misunderstand about the term car free? And I think most people think of it as that they're scared and defensive. They feel like people are going to take their car like a gun or something, which no one's coming for your guns, no one's coming for your cars. Same thing, right? But it does imply some sense of sacrifice that's, you know, inherently uncomfortable to changing their life. And
Mhm.
rather than thinking of it as a stick, people need to think of it as honey, right? How do we give rewards? How do we motivate changes in behaviors, shifts in stuff? And why would you do that? Well, there's physical health, there's mental health, and biggest incentive for a lot of people that they never think about, your financial health, right? If you don't have to spend as much on gas, fuel, maintenance, and being stuck in traffic, and maybe you get there a little slower, but
Mhm.
it's just a consistent pace. That's better for everyone in so many different ways. And like you said, the autonomy or the agency to choose your mode of transportation, whether it is on a bike, a scooter, an e-bike, motorcycle, car, whatever really matters.
I'm jealous of these like northeast and northwest cities where they get ferries. I'm like, gosh, I want to commute by ferry. I want to keep my
There's no water
gondola. Come
there.
on. They
Washington.
we have Lady Bird Lake here in Austin, and like we have plenty of bridges across, but like I want a ferry.
I don't think I've ever transported by ferry. Sorry,
Uh,
go ahead.
yeah, I've only experienced that in Vancouver. So go to Vancouver, experienced commuting by ferry. We went from Vancouver to Victoria Island, or Vancouver Island, Victoria on Vancouver Island, and we
Okay.
just took a ferry, and it was awesome. We saw whales. You can park, you can drive your car right into it. You can walk into it, and it's like a hotel on the water, basically for like 3 hours.
Well, I gotta add that to a bucket list
It's
then.
awesome.
That sounds awesome.
What shared principles and values do you think this movement speaks to across political or geographic lines? Very important.
Yeah, I mean, and also like the distinction between principles and values. I think of, our four principles as abilities. So accessibility, like I mentioned, affordability, and those two have to go first, I think, because accessibility means that you design things for everyone, and affordability makes it appealing. That's the honey to make people want that, right? It's not enough because a lot of people in construction, they're like, they don't want to do that extra step to make it accessible for people. And that's what happens if you break your leg? You're gonna be in
That's
that
now you.
situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It could affect you at any moment, whether you get in a car wreck or just I broke my ankle at the gym. Like just jumping. I broke my wrist there too. Like I break a lot of things there
Stay away
apparently.
from the gym.
No, go.
Okay,
Make yourself
okay.
stronger. And then, the next principle is sustainability and equitability. And maybe it takes a little longer and gradual improvement, on like a base structure to get to be more sustainable over time or offer equitability in terms of like not just social equitability, but financial equitability, the ability to have owns a unit, your house, your condo, or rather than just being a renter, really matters for people to be able to build themselves up in an economic system rather than it all trickling up to somewhere else. And a lot of the conversation in urbanism, I just don't see that in those four principles. And then in terms of values, especially after Renee Good and most recently Alex Preddy, I'm a big fan of co-opting different messages and especially opposition. So like when you look at, law enforcement, EMS, and all those different people in public service, there's like a challenge coin that's very popular in these kind of communities. I know because my ex-wife was a nurse. I worked as a BHT briefly in a mental hospital. So I worked with nurses. I worked with EMS, you know, not a cop. I've never been one. I never would be. But like their values are, honor, respect, integrity, courage, and service. And I would even broaden that to community value and service, you know, because those are kind of things that most people could talk about in just nonpartisan ways, whether you're Democrat, Republican, whether you're a leftist, a progressive, or an anarchist, or even a libertarian. These I think are values that we can all kind of talk about and just find common ground when everything is so polarized and so extreme, and just talk to people as human beings
Of
and like
course,
how do
yeah.
we make things affordable and all of that stuff. So,
I
yeah.
think it's definitely isolating being in a community where you're forced to transport or transportation is only one way. Like
Mm.
you're sitting in your car for an hour, hour and a half, and you don't have the interaction. But on a bus or a bike ride or on a ferry, gondola, however you like to commute, you are interacting with the people around you. You're interacting with your
Mhm.
community. I've been at I've driven in Austin plenty, but I've also biked in Austin plenty where I've sat at a stoplight and another biker pulled up next to me and have a conversation. You're never going to
Yeah.
see that person again, but for a minute, you get to
And
talk.
it's so beautiful. Those
Yeah.
just like micro interactions are
Yeah.
just so wholesome and beautiful. I could not agree more.
Yeah.
Like the other day, I was doing the same thing, just at a stop sign going to the gym. I didn't break anything. And like, there's this older woman, a little obese, and she's in a wheelchair, electric one, and their son is in a dress and just on holding on to it, and they're like, and we just start having just a wholesome chat like, hey, do you live around here? And just like, yeah, I live right over there. We go over there, we go over there, and we just kind
Mhm.
of walk, and like it was just like this micro interaction where you just see someone else's life and you just talk about it, and it's nice.
Yeah. This morning, it was just the atmosphere was really cool. 'Cause everybody was super excited to see this piece of infrastructure, this pedestrian bridge finally be finished, finally be opened. And like there were hundreds of bikes and kids and dogs and politicians out there and people just like loving it. And nobody was honking. There wasn't cars or it was it was really like free tacos,
Awesome.
Texas,
Free food's
yeah,
always
free
good.
coffee. And it was a great time just to like talk about a bridge, which you think would be pretty mundane, but it really makes the city really cool and really unique and makes it easier to live there. People really think like they see a cyclist or they see people in lycra or
The
spandex.
mammals.
I okay, I've been the person. I
So
like
have
to
I.
I've sports cycled before, and then I also like to put on my saddlebags on my road bike and go get coffee downtown. Why is that distinction important between a sports cyclist and also just an everyday person trying to do one less car trip?
I think, great question. I think that so much of cycling is framed in terms of, so, I feel like a lot of people in the competitive area are very dogmatic compared to people in the more casual space. And to be clear, like, I'm not going to be dogmatic about that. Like, all of them are like that. Certainly not. Right. The thing about cycling as a community more broadly than just, the everyday people or the sports people is that it's diverse, whether it's foldies, fixies, you know, roadies, e-bikers, there's just so much diversity in every way. And that's what's really awesome about it. What I like about the lifestyle about it is all the benefits that most people never really talk about outside of urban is. You know, the physical health benefits, losing weight, just feeling better, having a better heart, having better lungs, better legs, you know, the mental kind of clarity and focus. Like if you just sit in a car in an hour going to work compared to driving, going like an hour and a half bike ride is a long ride. I have done that to work. It's
I
not
think I
necessarily fun.
just did that today. Gosh.
So
Yeah.
you would know, like you get into work and you might be a
Yeah.
little tired, but you are strangely focused and you're
Hmm.
ready, you
Hmm.
know, compared to feeling groggy and like, I need my second coffee, you know, like it's just a different mentality. And a lot of people, and there's statistics on this, that people who cycle to work are more productive. So businesses should have every reason to incentivize their workers to be doing this, you know, and again, financial health, it also helps that. So when you frame that as a lifestyle and all the benefits that come with it as a lifestyle, as opposed to just a sport or just like I put my car once a month and I go to critical mass, I think a lot more people would enjoy it, you know, or at least I would hope. That's what I found. And I started just in COVID, just making a commitment. I am going to go to the grocery store only on my bike. I am only going to get what I can carry, and I'm just going to go more frequently.
Yeah.
And that really cut down a lot. I lost like 20 pounds just doing that. Eventually, I got into road cycling and long distance, 100 plus mile rides from like Phoenix to Tucson, stuff like that. I did it first with a group and then I did it solo. And, you know, I do delivery now on an e bike, and that's my main ride. But it wasn't something that I just, boom, changed or anything dogmatic or culty, you know? It's
Hmm.
just those small things that build over time.
I have a lot of thoughts, but
Yeah.
people think of e-bikes and they see all the videos online and on Facebook and the news,
Mhm.
and they think they're dangerous. Like,
Mhm.
what do you have to say to that?
I mean, so there it's a big issue, I think, to unpack.
Hmm.
I so going back to my college education as an applied sociologist, I'm looking at this and I'm seeing realistically there are youth e-bike gangs that are coming across. This is a real issue. First of all, I don't want to blame parents because it's beyond just the parents. It's how we are structuring society that is creating this. Uh, and that's not a cop out of accountability by any means. It's just we have to understand structurally what is causing this. Is two parents, often divorced and remarried, and then you have four people working two different jobs, and still kids aren't getting the attention and the community that they need. And so now they're just creating that community, and they're doing it without often shared values, you know. And like I saw this one video where, you know, it's this huge ride, which is awesome to see normally, but then one of the guys or several of them just like basically rob the convenience store. And it's like, yo, this is not bike life at all. This isn't what critical mass is about or any of the kind of thing that you often see in there. And it's just a lot of youth that just don't have direction. What they have is parents working too much, just trying to grind, and they can't really afford their kid a car because car prices have gone up or they're too costly to maintain for the used ones. So what do? The kid wants an e-bike to join their friend on an e-bike ride or something, and that's what's going on. There's nothing wrong with that kid wanting to connect with their friends. There's nothing wrong with them doing these ride outs. What's wrong is like not doing it with some kind of shared values, not engaging community leaders to help ride this, and you know, coming at it with a stick rather than with honey, and saying, we love what you guys are doing. Let's just do this safe. When you're popping wheelies, great, awesome. I love seeing that talent, that enthusiasm. It makes things so fun. But give people space on either side, 5 feet. Give people space in front of you, and don't. And if you're going to stop, pull over the side so that someone behind you doesn't run into you. You know, and that's a respect thing, right? Be respectful of other people to give that space for them to just trick out or to just grow and wipe out and pick themselves up. You know, but
Hmm.
that's not happening. So I hope that answers your question on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. It didn't go the direction I thought, but I agree.
What
um,
kind of direction were you
I
thinking?
was
Curious.
more, I guess, like the educational, like you said, parents buy their kids an e-bike, but they buy them like the wrong classic e-bike where it's basically just a moped or a motorcycle, and that's when they end up on the news and laws get passed, and really people like families and elderly people and people who are injured, like e-bikes are really accessible to those kind of people. And I've heard about a few studies where like people actually bike more because they have an
Yeah.
e-bike as opposed to what is now called an acoustic bike or not just
Mhm.
a bike.
I mean, I agree with that. I
Yeah.
think, like, for example, so in Arizona, in Gilbert, I think it was, and this was a dirt bike, I believe, not an e-bike, to be fair, but
Mhm.
it's still part of the broader sociological trend because aside from it being e-bike, it's not just e-bikes that are causing this kind of reaction. The people going on these big ride outs, these kind of lawless kind of stuff, they're also doing gas bikes, they're doing mopeds, stuff like that. So it's not just an e-bike issue. It's broader than that. It's in sociology, it's called anamine, in a way where it's just like a breakdown of norms. So for e-bikes, I don't. On the one way, I think that e-motors should have better classification as um, electric motorcycles. But at the same time, what I'm seeing when they have that, when people are having these policy conversations, they're basically trying to restrict class 3 and class 2 into an e-motor, and that's not right.
Yeah.
That's not the result because like you can still have a throttle and pedals on be a class 2 or 3. I know this from experience, but it's like the e-motors don't have pedals is the biggest distinction, and they often ride them on the sidewalks, and that's a matter of respect. You're not being respectful of people in wheelchairs. You're not being respectful of pedestrians. I ride my class 2 on a sidewalk when there isn't a bike lane because it's protected, but I slow down
Mhm.
whenever there's a pedestrian, and I'm always like, "Oh, so sorry." I just apologize profusely, and, I just make sure that they try and have a smile on their face rather than being scared. But I'm just one person, not a culture, because there isn't that culture yet. Is that kinda.
Yeah. I think we got the idea.
And I think, like, instead
Yeah.
of just impounding bikes, put them in a training class, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Um,
offer these class for rehabilitation for these people, you know? So, for me, like, it started with going to a co-working space that's no longer around. It was
okay.
called Gangplank Chandler. There's a and from there, that's how I learned how to code the front end of websites, the back end. I even got into cybersecurity. I learned how to design and print 3D objects. I got into a little and I'm not an expert in all these, just a generalist, and a little bit of electrical engineering for things like Arduino projects. And now, like today, I'm working with LoRa and mesh networks because of that kind of stuff. And this was all before GPT ever existed, right? I learned from people and the community space and the culture of that co working, a free co working space. And it was funded by the city of Chandler, and but it was always more focused on entrepreneurship and skill slash trading rather than social entrepreneurship and mutual aid and providing things like affordable housing. And I always kind of resented that when I was there, when it was up. And it kind of failed because they fired their community manager. And over time, other things happened and it lost funding because they weren't providing value per their contract with the city. Um, and then the other kind of source of inspiration was down in Tucson. There's three different I'm looking at the time, three
Mhm.
different co-housing communities that I went down, and I love how they emphasize affordability for single family homes. One of the challenges is that a lot of these places are sprawled out. They're not in urban areas. They don't have multifamily units. So they're also like you don't build a rail to like a new city when you build a new neighborhood. It's not transit oriented like that. So in thinking about these kind of things, and as I saw cul-de-sac sprout up, I reflected on my time at, intentional communities and that co-working space. I'm like, I wish there was something that merged all of this together so that we could get all the benefits of all these things without all the negatives of all these things. And I'm clearly not good at implementing that yet, but who knows? Maybe one day.
Okay. What role do
Yeah.
complete street transit-oriented development and 15-minute neighborhoods play in making this lifestyle realistic?
I mean, they reduce a lot of congestion for one. I learned about complete roads when I was in school in applied sociology, and I never thought I'd hear about it again. So it's funny how that comes like 20 years later, and from just one guest speaker. And now I'm like thinking more about it. Complete roads are just awesome because you can reduce congestion, you can reduce the emissions, you can make cities walkable and therefore safer for both the cars and the pedestrians, people on bikes, and honestly, it drives business. Foot traffic drives business. Cars do not. Car traffic does nothing for business. And we need to really talk more about that because that will sell people. Is that that's how you get that investment from people is like, I want more business from my small business. I want to start a business down there. I want it to be more likely to succeed. You know, what do we do for that? Well, complete roads, TOD, transit oriented design, or I have another acronym called TOAD, and I call a little unofficial mascot on my hat over there, Todd the Toad, for Toad being transit oriented accessible design, just adding that again, that accessibility and how we think about things and just having a little friendly frog or toad to like hammer it down. So yeah.
If you're enjoying the show, leave a rating or a like. It's a small gesture that goes a long way in helping other urbanists find the show. Now back to the show. Yeah. So talk about your Substack. How did was that the first thing that came up, or what's the origin?
I think so. When I first created the Instagram page, if I remember right, I created that page anonymously up until I got like the first 100 followers. And
Mhm.
then I published this Substack, if I remember the order right. Because I just wanted to see, like, hey, mostly I wanted to just gently kind of move cul-de-sac towards at least at bare minimum, like, think more about people, think about families, not just sinks and dinks, people who don't have kids, because I have a son
Mhm.
and I saw other people in that community like really struggling to raise a family there. And I also, there's no equity, there's no ownership, and they're calling it a neighborhood, which was just a really big pet peeve to me because I think of when I hear neighborhoods, I think of neighbors owning their own land and being neighborly, and having that financial support from that equity and stuff. It matters. And when you just have apartments and rent them, it's just a tacky kind of marketing I felt that was just disingenuine. I love the people there. I love the people. I love the mission that they're doing, and it really inspired me a lot of it. But like kind of, you know, and so I kind of wrote rather than like writing bad pieces. I've never wrote in a piece about cul-de-sac, for
Mhm.
example. So I'd rather, say, okay, this is how I would do it if I had, $250 million to build a community, which is a lot of money. And it's hard to get that without like VC funding. It's almost damn near impossible, especially if you want to do equity, because there's a difference between crowdfunding and equity funding or crowd equity funding. There's a huge legal distinction, and you can get in huge trouble if you don't follow laws around that. So I just kind of made the Substack to just write things down and then rewrite them. The first article I wrote just to really get down, and I've rewritten it like 3 times entirely. I just didn't want to republish it. And then the second article was more like I was reading Strong Towns and other books, and I just had some other thoughts, and I wanted, instead of writing a huge book, I just would rather write this large article. I think it's like 50 pages that just a little more concise and representative of my own kind of views on it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. That's kind of how this whole thing started. I just had a lot of thoughts and I guess some
Hmm.
opinions, and I want to talk to cool people, even if they got like 10 or 15 uh, downloads. Like, who cares? I got to talk to like these politicians and these city planners and these advocates. And then the Instagram came on like a week later. So that's been great. And it's been really cool learning from people from other states and other parts of the country and other parts of the world and see what's happening there. You brought up strong towns, what are some other books that you would recommend to people who are listening on that subject?
Like within the strong town community?
No, 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 just like urbanism, city planning, people-oriented
Oh,
development.
I mean, like I regularly go on Instagram and I just look for strong towns or urbanism and I just see who pops up and I'll follow who's interesting. Like Oceanside, I've been talking to some of the Strongtown people there and Oceanside cleanup, and they're lovely people. I think we cross posted one time because I made like a comment like, "Who benefits from?" They made this awesome content, and I was
Yeah.
like, "I wonder what it would look like if you just put who benefited," and then they just did it, and it came out amazing. And so that was really fun and just an like what you were saying about creating your podcast, just having just a genuine conversation with people. But this was just over text, you know.
What about any sort of like physical books that you would recommend on any of that?
Oh, hold on. Oh my
Hold
god.
on.
Such a
You have a whole notes list?
so last year I did 100 audiobooks in a year.
Okay.
So it's a large list. Give me a minute.
Okay, give me like the top 50.
Yeah, I need to pull up. And that's just the audiobooks. I also
Uh,
read a lot. So okay. What was the one? Okay. I haven't finished this one yet. Where is it? A Love Letter to Suburbia by Diane Elisa is I haven't finished yet, but I follow her stuff. I love the content she puts out. And what I love about her audiobook too is I love how imperfect it is because you hear cars in the background
oh yeah.
just being recorded. And it just comes across so much more authentic and genuine and just sweet about the conversation that she has about suburbia and strong towns kind of messaging. Uh, I, for one, really like this isn't about urbanism, but more about like activism. Rules for Radical is one of my favorite books by Saldi Alinsky. He's basically the founder of all modern political organizing in America, and he's just a character too. He's really hilarious. American Urbanist is a really good one too. Um, Cities and Wealth of Nations by Jane Jacobs, obviously a classic for so many people. Um, Renegade Car Camping was pretty interesting too. Uh, let's see. Zen and Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, even though I don't own a motorcycle and haven't for a long time, um, just it goes hand in hand with bicycle maintenance and like that
Mhm.
kind of culture and just really therapeutic. Oddly enough, books like Power Broker, which is about a big bad guy. Do you know who we're talking about?
Yeah, sure.
Robert Moses.
Okay. Okay.
It's a huge book, and even the audiobook is 60 hours. It's massive physically on paper and it's several days to listen towards. I thought um I could go on, but those are probably
Yeah.
my
Okay.
favorites.
Never
I
had
read
that
and
many
listen to a lot.
recommendations before. Like I had John Zimmerman on here a couple weeks ago, and he just had the books ready. Like, here you go. How about this one? And this one? And this one. I mean, he does
Yeah.
interview authors, so I assume he has a ton of those books just on his desk. But I thought that was funny.
Yeah, I
Great.
mean, I'm always listening to audiobooks when
Yeah.
I read. That's how I go through I mean, when I ride, well, that's how I go through so many.
Okay. So where can people find you online?
Car Free Community Trust at Instagram, the Substack, um, which is like I will give free articles to anyone if that's ever a thing. But there is now I think some monetization, which I just would use for hosting bike rides and like building stronger communities and stuff. But also like I'm really looking to kind of build out a formal board of directors of people, like how you started this to network with people. I really need more people to organizing rides is surprisingly exhausting emotionally for me. Like texting people to like,
Uh,
hey, are you showing up? All that stuff. With everything else in my life, from being a parent, from running my own business to also working just delivery job to managing this page. And I do a lot of shogi and distributed mesh networking hobbies and just technical stuff. I'm spread really thin. I can't do everything. So just having someone to do that or like, networking with people who like doing, you know, calisthenics and yoga and like community events like that, beyond just cycling and the broader like health and wellness stuff. also, I'm always networking with people like that, and also just real estate leaders because I don't know how to, like, I'm currently evaluating converting a single family home in Tempe to a multifamily one by stripping out the parking and stuff around like September this year if we're really lucky. But there's a lot of red tape to cut through. It's just a lot of work, and I don't know how to do all that. So finding the right people rather than just anyone is really challenging too.
Okay.
I worked in startup space for a long time. You lose a lot of effort if you don't start with the right people and you just invite anyone into stuff. So,
All right.
yeah.
Well, I hope that all works out for you. It sounds like you're doing great work
Trying.
there in Arizona. Great. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for the conversation. This is really cool. Looking forward to hearing more about you and all the good work.
Yeah. Look forward to seeing this and your other podcasts. I'm going to be putting that on and listening just like an audiobook.
Over the coming weeks, we will continue to explore the people and projects that are putting our cities in motion. You can follow Cities in Motion on Instagram for behind the scenes content and updates for the show. I'm Jacob, and thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Don't forget to keep your cities in motion.